Miss Oklahoma 2021 is the executive director for Calm Waters and a TEDx speaker. Calm Waters is a nonprofit in Oklahoma City that serves children and families who have experienced loss due to death, divorce, or other significant loss. They provide free support service and other services. She is frequently tapped to speak on issues relating to branding, nonprofit marketing, and management. Her deepest passion is empowering other working moms to resist the pull to achieve work-life balance, instead seeking a fulfilled life. Her expertise and real-life perspectives have been heard on stages across Oklahoma, including as a TEDx presenter in 2014. Put your hands together for Ms. Erin Engelke.
I'm on. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. Good evening. It is an honor to be here. I am so grateful to Doug for asking me to come speak, and also a little annoyed that he asked me to be first. Just saying. But no hard feelings, Doug. Okay. I am Erin. I am a wife. Hopefully I can get this to move. I'm a wife, a mother of 3, an executive director, a board member, a community volunteer, a public speaker, and as was mentioned, most recently, I don't have eyes on the back of my head, even though I tell my children I do. Most recently, Mrs. Oklahoma 2020. Now, on paper or on screen, I have accomplished a lot of things, and I have a lot of titles. And to most people from the outside, I have it all together. But like a lot of us in this life, I have another title. I am a resilient griever because I have gone through loss, through grief. And for me, that loss began as a young girl. I was 6 years old when she told me. I was sitting on our maroon and forest green couch in the living room of my childhood home in Idaho. My mom seated right next to me, dressed in her culotte shorts. Do y'all remember those? Yeah, right? Some of you may still have some. It's funny the things you remember as a child and the feelings, the experiences around you. And for me, I distinctly remember what my mom was wearing. I remember the light shining through the front windows into our living room. But I don't remember all the details of the words she said, but I will never forget the summary. You see, my mom and dad had divorced before I turned 2. My dad had come from a long line of alcoholics and struggled with the fear that he would end up the same way. He did drugs, partied, and attempted to erase his own childhood trauma. His father was an alcoholic and could never seem to kick his addiction, prompting my dad to feel like his life was destined to the same fate. My mom couldn't handle the constant ups and downs of his struggles, and they ultimately decided to end their marriage. She told me he loved me and he enjoyed spending time with me. I was born in beautiful St. Petersburg, Florida, just minutes from the beach, making a perfect place for my dad and I to spend time together. After my parents' divorce, they had an arrangement that he would pick me up on certain days of the week. We would spend the day, just the two of us, usually at the beach, my favorite, still is to this day. And then I would go back home to my mom. On one of the many days he was supposed to pick me up, he didn't show. My mom tried calling him several times, and after multiple unsuccessful attempts, she eventually got my distant cousin to meet her at his apartment to make sure he was okay. But he wasn't. My father had taken his own life, killing himself with a gun, leaving me fatherless. I knew my dad had died when I was 2 years old, but I never knew how, probably because I was too young to understand. But at 6, I was developmentally more prepared to better understand what had happened to the man I would never know. I have no memory of my biological father named Steve. I have photos, and I'm grateful for that even to this day. Every 40 seconds, someone dies of suicide in the United States, leaving at least 6 people as survivors of suicide loss. I am one of those 6. Processing the death of a loved one is complicated, no matter how they die, but loss due to suicide creates a grief that is intensified. There's so many unanswered questions, many of which I still find myself asking today. Was I not good enough for him to work through his struggles and be here with me? Did he not try to find help? I was too young to have done anything to help him, but if I had been older, that would have been a natural question to ask. What could I have done to help or to stop him from ending his life? So much of who I have become today is a result of this early childhood experience. I overachieve in ways that are sometimes extra or beyond what anyone expects of me. And for the longest time, I didn't really know why I continued to strive for more instead of being confident that I don't need to achieve to be loved. Sure, a lot of my driven type A personality is hardwired in me, but there's also a part of me that is attempting to be enough because I subconsciously have never been certain I was enough for my biological father. As executive director of Calm Waters, Oklahoma City's only grief center, I now know that these are all very natural, normal emotions to feel, and that I'm not the only one feeling them. In truth, I wish my mom and I had found grief support decades ago to help us navigate our own grief journeys. What she experienced was significantly different than what I have experienced. Yet even today, we don't speak of Steve or even about that part of our lives. I can't imagine how healing it would have been to have met other children who had lost a parent to suicide like I did. In fact, I have told very few people the details of my biological father's death. Tonight is the very first time I have ever spoken publicly about it. My work at Calm Waters has become more than just a job. It's a personal mission to ensure other children and parents have the support they so desperately need, to provide them a community of support, to realize they're not alone. My team and I work every day to help children and families just like my own process their emotions that come with loss, whether that's through death, divorce, or some other awful tragedy. Loss is a funny thing. It doesn't guarantee it will only hit you one time in life. It can and will happen again and again. The loss of my biological father was just the beginning of my grief journey. I married the love of my life, Jason, in 1997. He's here today. And thank you. 24 years. And soaked up married life for a couple of years before our first tragedy as a married couple happened. It was late one fall evening. My husband and I were still unpacking boxes in our newly purchased townhouse, our first house ever, when I got the call from a police officer in Minnesota. My uncle, the brother of my biological father, had taken his life. As Greg's only living relative, I was the person who was to be called and notified of his death. The officer informed me a note had been left by Greg on his refrigerator and that he had shot himself in the woods behind his property. It was like history had repeated itself all over again. As a newly married young woman, all of 21 years old, I was forced to grow up fast when I received this news. My husband and I pulled together the funeral from hundreds of miles away, and then for the better part of 2 years, worked to sell all of his belongings, including his house, and spend countless hours in our own personal finances to wrap up his estate with attorneys. All those questions I had asked previously about my biological dad's death were reemerging. Was I not good enough even now for Greg to stay alive? Was there anything I could have done to help him? It was heartbreaking and exhausting. And even though Greg left a video capturing the essence of why he chose to take his life, it's still difficult to process this, even to this day. I'm so thankful I had Jason to walk this journey with, especially because I had no immediate family nearby to support me. My parents were living in another country at the time, and any other relatives who could have helped were too removed from the situation. Suffice it to say, I didn't have much of a support system. Just a couple years later, loss hit us again. Becoming a mother was something I had hoped and dreamed of for as long as I could remember. I played with my Cabbage Patch dolls like they were my babies. So when Jason and I decided it was time to start a family, I thought it was going to happen, and it should happen as soon as possible. But it took us a year to get pregnant the first time. I nearly cried out of joy when I got that positive pregnancy test. Was it going to be a boy or a girl? Were they going to be blonde and fair-skinned like me or dark-haired like their dad? I wasn't gifted much time to dream about our baby because just a few weeks later, I started spotting and miscarried shortly after. My elation turned to devastation so quickly I could barely get out of bed. After visiting with my doctor and crying endlessly, we decided to keep trying. Months passed before I got pregnant again, only to miscarry. And then miscarry again, and then miscarry again. I was wrecked with grief for nearly 4 long years. As I walked through infertility and my miscarriages, I felt an insane amount of grief over the dream that wasn't coming to life. Sadly, I didn't know how to cope with these emotions. I'd never dealt with the grief from the death of Steve or Greg to suicide. So this new grief triggered a whole lot of new emotions. So what did I do? I sought comfort in things I thought would make me feel better. My husband and I bought a brand new car, thinking that would bring me joy. It didn't. If anything, it added more debt to our lives, and I regretted the purchase. I found comfort in food, eating all the things I wanted the most, sweets and carbs, right? And ended up gaining a whole lot of weight. It didn't help in the long term. If anything, it made me feel worse and incredibly unhealthy. We adopted a puppy. Yes, a puppy. I poured into our adorable Riley and even did silly things like make a scrapbook with photos of him. I'm pretty sure I was losing it at this point. My husband and I took a long vacation to Paris and London. Honestly, this was a good thing. We needed to spend time together, focusing on the present and the good in this world, making memories together before we added to our family. We took in a foreign exchange student from Brazil named Mateus, who lived with us for almost a year. I loved getting to take care of him. It was like I was finally a mom. It was during this time that I relaxed and focused on someone other than me and my infertility. I realize now that I was too focused on the future and the what-ifs, not counting my blessings in the present or seeking support from those who had been through this journey. I see how much I needed community, just as the families do who come to Calm Waters. How much I needed help instead of trying to do it all on my own. Today, I am blessed with 3 beautiful, blonde, fair-complected children, right? Like their mama. And never take for granted that I was able to successfully carry them to term and that they are healthy today. I am also the daughter of my father, Randy, make sure I popped up there, who adopted me shortly before my 4th birthday. He has loved and supported me as though I am biologically his. And while I will always have lingering questions about my birth father, Randy is and always will be my dad. So how did I walk through my grief journey and am able to stand here successfully doing life? Well, for starters, I have gotten mental health help through therapy to help me process the loss of Steve and how to cope and not allow that loss to define me or to alter my ability to have healthy relationships. My husband and I also found healing in naming our 4 precious babies that we lost, recognizing that they were deserving of our love and memory, even though we never met them. Above all, I truly believe it is because of something called resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back after difficult circumstances. When faced with hardship, you adapt. You find a way to rebuild your life and come back better than ever. And I've allowed myself to grieve, to feel those hard emotions, to cry and acknowledge the pain. I take care of myself by getting enough sleep and exercise. I am aware that my grief will be triggered, and if I'm honest with you, writing this was triggering. And I give myself time when I am triggered. I am a resilient griever, and resilient grievers believe that something good can come out of even the worst events. They try to engender positive memories of the person who died and work to use their grief story to help others walk through their own. That's why it is my mission to be a light to other women struggling with infertility and miscarriage, as well as those who have lost a loved one to suicide. I want them to know they are not alone, that so many others in this life have faced the same kinds of grief and loss. And while I can never, ever take away my own loss, or theirs, or yours, I can hold your hand through it and love, listen, and support. I wasn't alone as much as I thought I was, and you aren't either, no matter what your grief story looks like. It is my hope that my story today will be an encouragement, an opportunity for you to give yourself permission to find help, seek community, and to give back to others who are struggling. Thank you.